Welcome to Nailed It, a podcast featuring business tips from industry leaders, presented by Clever Punch. Here's your host, Jade Flogerzi.
Joining us today, we have Alissa. She's the founder and principal designer of Bright Design Lab, headquartered in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon, with projects throughout the U.S. Alissa has a Bachelor of Science in Interior Design, a minor in business, and has been working in design industry in many iterations over 30 years. For the last 15 years, since starting Bright Design Lab, she's focused primarily on creating elevated yet relaxed interiors for residential clients. Alissa co-founded Bright in 2009 to deep dive into a then untapped niche in Portland for design with a modern European aesthetic. Bright Design Lab turned 14 in January and is now solely led and owned by Alissa. She feels it's important to point out that while she's the driving force behind her team, Bright has grown beyond just her, empowering 5 talented women, including one in Paris, France. It's the power of Bright team's collaborative and rigorous process that allows them to create the sophisticated yet playful design language that has created the signature look that is sought out by their private residential clients. Their forte has become designing spaces that feel authentic and curated for each client and that are not too precious to live in. They focus on brands that are socially responsible, local makers, small makers, and are making a leap towards specifying more products from Black-owned and BIPOC-owned businesses. Bright Design Lab's work can be seen published in Grey Magazine, Domino, Architectural Digest Germany, Sunset, Dwell, among others across the globe. Bright focuses mainly on whole home comprehensive residential design, but also will take in select kitchen and furniture package projects. They often work remotely on projects around the country, their current projects being in the Bay Area, Central Coast, including Santa Barbara and San Clemente, as well as Chicago and Detroit. With Alissa's recent acquisition of her dual citizenship in Austria, Design Lab also has plans to expand globally, hopefully within the next year or so. So welcome to the podcast, Alissa. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks, Jade.
And one of the reasons that I reached out to you and was hoping that you would be a guest for us is because from what I've seen with Bright Design Lab, the projects that you have, your interactions, your team, it seems like everything that you touch is so cool. Like that's how, when I speak with you and I get off the phone, that's the first thing I say to myself is like, Alissa is so cool, a cool person. So it feels like everything you touch, your delivery, your projects is not only cool, but very deliberate. It never feels overworked or stuffy, but very effortless. So my first question is, have you always been that way as a person? Were you that way as a child?
A lot of high compliments there, Jade. I don't know that I think it might be a little bit of an illusion that I'm so ultimately cool, but I definitely think that what you're seeing is I do have an outwardly calm demeanor. Probably that's not actually what's resonating inside. There's a whole party going on in here. You know, as a child, I definitely was already on my life's mission to seek out things that were unusual and unprecedented. I do surround myself with cool people. I think it's just something that I'm drawn to innately, possibly because of my upbringing I come from a child of immigrant parents and I was rather shy. So I think I sought out people that were the opposite. And, you know, that included individuals that were very artistic or more dramatic than I was. And I think after many years of that, it just started to manifest as how it was infused into Bright Design Lab. I now see myself more of an instigator and somebody who empowers others to create.
I can relate. I love the word instigator. I'm like, ooh, I like that word. Do you feel like your creative passions, your creativity as a person, does that transfer outside of your work as well? Like, are there things that you have personal creative passion projects?
I think, you know, a lot of what I am doing is information seeking. in my life. I don't usually sit down for a project. I'm not a painter or a crafting person, but I travel a lot and I'm always in awe, whether it's I'm on a hike in nature. I just got back from Italy, the architecture. I'm fascinated by people and cultures. And I think that sense of awe is also what I bring back to the work that I do on a day-to-day.
I love it. Where did you go in Italy?
We went to Milan Design Week, and that was amazing. I had actually never been before. So my team, one of which was the one in Paris, she with us, Lux, and also Katie, our design director, we were there. And then we took the train down to Modena, where Ferrari was born, and then into Rome, which actually stole my heart again.
Cool. I'm not familiar with Milan Design Week. What does that entail?
400,000 extra people in the city of Milan. But, Design Week is a chance for vendors to debut new work. It's focused on the interior design industry. Milan specifically is a furniture manufacturing mecca. So every showroom is a party. And then there's also the more typical conference center with all of the artists. And people come from all over the world as well to show their wares. But it's focused on the interior design industry. Also specialty niches within the industry like kitchen and bath or accessories, things like that. It's a huge event.
So cool. I bet that was such an inspiring trip, personally, professionally, and then to have the connection between your team as well to do that together. Switching back to your work at Bright Design Lab, do you find that, we talked a bit about your demeanor, your projects, how you come across as a person professionally. Do you feel like you tend to attract like-minded clients?
I think it's a bit of an organic process. Sure, yes, definitely. And we have some amazing clients. So if that's any reflection of us, then I feel very lucky. Initially, it's probably more about the aesthetics of what we're doing, our use of color. And I think that our designs tend to look more curated, less cookie cutter than, it's not just out of a showroom in a retail store. So I think that people who want something that is unique to them are attracted to us. But I think it is true that there must be something else because our clients are particularly cool.
Do you find that they tend to be creative individuals as well? Or do you find that they're attracted to you because you bring those qualities to the table?
It's mixed. I mean, definitely we get creatives coming in. We do have a lot of executives from Nike. Usually it's a creative of a different field, but I do find that when the creatives are our clients, they do appreciate the process and they are the ones that come in with more ideas on the forefront. Whereas I would say probably more like 2/3 of our clients are physicians and people who are maybe appreciators of art, but will let us know that they need us.
Interesting. So walk me through a little bit the process of working with a client. Obviously, you have incredible projects to show off the work that you've done and to act as a portfolio for you. So if somebody is interested and wants to know more about working with you, what do those initial conversations or what do those initial steps look like usually?
I do all of the intake for the clients. I've tried various different ways, but I found that initial connection is really important. And at the same time that they're trying to select a designer, we're also vetting our client. I feel really lucky that we're able to do that, but I think it's a really important thing to not only connect on the aesthetic part of it, but personally. I think that call is usually 20 minutes, but sometimes longer if we're really connecting. And then we actually bring people into the studio. I think what people expect is that we will come out to their homes. But what we found is that, a home is a sum of parts. There's always pretty much the same thing in there. Whereas the process is really important for people to sign on for. And having them in our space separated from what's on their mind about the actual design and the scope is important to separate that from what the actual process is. So what we're doing is we're taking in a lot of information and then we are solving the puzzle basically for the client. So we're getting to know them at each one of those steps. The first phase that we go through is a pre-design programming. So we're getting to know the house, the architectural style, how our clients live, who lives in the house, how long they'll be there. And all of those details are part of the equation of how we solve this puzzle. And then after that part is what we consider the fun part, is what most people think of when they hire somebody. The part where we're like, come into the house and know exactly what to do. That doesn't really happen.
Yeah. That part of it sounds like that's more of the pieces that that anyone's gonna see at the end, the final product, and what's gonna be kind of visibly the final version of everything that has come together and all the details and how they live. What about, and speaking of that last step, like you said, that's what most people think of when they think of interior design. So when it comes to inspiration for how things should look or what the final look and feel of each room is going to be, how do you get there with clients? Do they bring inspiration? Do they bring images? Do they refer to your projects? How does that conversation happen? And how do you kind of gain their trust that the final look is going to match what they have in mind?
All of the above. We sometimes play a this or that game, which is fun for engaging clients. Often they do bring in either they'll send us a Pinterest board or maybe, direct to one of our prior projects. And then we also gather imagery that we feel is appropriate for the architecture of the home and take cues from the actual building. And then also sometimes specific details we're thinking about, like organizational details for a pantry or a kitchen or a bathroom. And so that's pretty early in the process when we're developing this design language, which everything then the creation of this sculpture, if you will, it's everything that we pull speaks to this original design language that we've developed.
Nice. When you think about the best projects that you've had, the most successful projects that you have, what do you think are the key factors, either if it has to do with the client or the project itself, that contributed to make it such a success?
Definitely a client that trusts in the process. I think that's one of the reasons why we start that conversation early on. I've been in this industry for 33 years now, and my team isn't far behind me. But one of the things we've realized is when we skip pieces in that process, the end result is not what people came to us for. So realizing that early on, and if people continue to trust us as we go through this process, that it's really important to hit those milestones and those goals. One of the most important things of being a designer, I believe, along with the creativity, is the organizational process and also creating those expectations. We're creating drawings, SketchUp drawings as well, like a 3D model, and also documenting these specifications so that everything is outlined for the contractor, and it's also creating an expectation for the client.
Amazing. You referred to your process a lot as that kind of being like the North Star and the guiding point through your projects. And then I also just heard you talk a lot about organization. I can imagine that is so important, especially when it's a creative industry. And I can imagine clients get excited and they can maybe get not distracted, but off in tangents, right? So does that happen? And is that kind of why that process is so important?
Yes, and also the communication with the contractors. There's so many moving parts with all of the multitudes of trades that are in during the building process. Each person needs their set of guidelines. They need the drawings and the specifications. And if even one number is wrong, it can create havoc, basically. So accuracy and organization are key to these things. Also, during the bid process, the contractor needs all of that information, and that becomes somewhat of a legal document between the client and the contractor. That is something that's independent of our team, but we help to facilitate that relationship and make sure that the designs are executed properly.
That's another good point that I think people don't think about very often when it comes to interior design is the collaboration with other trades. And I can imagine that's such a balance because the client is important because that's who you're working for. But then you also have to have success with your partnership with the different trades that are coming in and out of the home and working well with those. What have you found contributes to success with the other professionals that are going to be involved in and out and overlapping as this project moves to completion?
We have a pretty well dialed in set of contractors that we love to work with. So we only work with general contractors who then have their trades and their subcontractors that they are familiar with. And I think, well, I talk about our process. We try to let them do their process the way that they need to do it. We do not manage the subs, but we do communicate with them to make sure that the details are all refined. But I think during the getting close to the bidding process, we do somewhat of a matchmaking with the clients, the contractors, to make sure it's a good fit.
Back to the style, the pretty pictures, the projects that you've done. Do you feel like clients reach out to you because you have a certain style? And if so, can you put that into words? Or do you have a more of an approach of like, it's all about connecting with the person and how they're going to use the space and the styles vary widely?
I think that over the years that Bright Design Lab does evoke a style, but it's hard to pinpoint because one, we have a whole team of individuals, so it's a collaboration. And two, to your point, we are tapping into the client, and sometimes we're even looking at a piece of artwork that they have and developing the design from there. A lot of times we're speaking to the architecture because we want it to be appropriate, in case the client moves, and also just because it feels right if it complements the style of the home. That's not to say sometimes we do go into a traditional house and, let's say, modernize it a bit. We'll elevate the feeling of it. But I think we're always paying respect to the architecture as well.
I love that point. That's not something I would have thought of before, but it's so relevant to your work because you think of Portland, or we're the same way here in Santa Barbara, or any city that has been developed and has history to it. New ground up builds are going to be so rare. And so I love that you brought that out. And it's so relative to the work that you do because probably majority of the projects that you have are going to be remodels, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, here and there.
Switching to your team, I know you mentioned a little bit about the trips that you took earlier this year, and you mentioned a few of the people on your team. Going back to the demeanor that you have, your style, what kind of team have you attracted? Who's on your team, and how would you describe them?
We're a team of 6 women. That's not to say I wouldn't hire someone else. That's who's been attracted to Bright. They are fiercely creative. I would say more so even than myself, true artists. But they're also very organized. I mean, that is something that is actually, I think, hard to find. but it's critical. They have to be both creatives and detail oriented and also friendly because we have to relate with clients. They're also particularly conscientious people that we have at Bright. I don't know that we knew that in the beginning, but it just happens to be. And also people of great integrity on a personal level. So I feel really fortunate that they were attracted to us. And again, if any reflection, I feel very lucky. I think all of us at Bright care how we move around in the world and how we affect people. And that's reflected in the work and how we interact with clients and contractors.
Amazing. Lovely sentiments and such wonderful qualities. I'm sure you feel very lucky to work with them and to have them represent your clients and your projects. Thank you so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it so much. I love the painting behind you.
Thank you, Jade. It's my mom's original from the 60s, actually.
Oh my goodness. That is so cool. I love it. And I love the cactus representing you here up in the Pacific Northwest. Really, truly, thank you. I love this conversation. I love the work that you do. If anyone is interested in seeing your projects, brightdesignlab.com has an amazing portfolio, just eye candy for interior design and inspiration. So if you'd like to see Alissa and her team's projects, that's where you can find her. And we look forward to chatting with you again in the future and wish you all the best on your future projects.
Thanks, Jade. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Nailed It, business tips from industry leaders, brought to you by Clever Punch. Nailed It is all about connecting with people, building relationships, and helping each other. If you're interested in connecting with any of the guests on our episodes, you can find their contact info in our show notes or on the podcast page at cleverpunchco.com. You can also email info@cleverpunchco.com with any questions or feedback. I'm your host, Jade Flogerzi. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.